Okay, we are being recorded.
Yep.
So we have to behave ourselves.
I don't know what happened to Margie. She's sort of got a black screen there. Oh, here it comes.
Now she's overly.
Hi, Margie. You're
Peter's
looking
gotta go.
very bright on the screen tonight. That's good. Margie, I'm going to turn to you. Oh, good. I'm going to turn to you first when we start, because you have a guest to introduce to us.
I do.
Good.
My guest is Marianne's iPad.
Oh,
There's more than her iPad. There's actually Marianne. She's somewhere there. There she is.
there she is. Okay.
Yeah.
Well, let's just wait until we get more participants, because a lot of people usually show up at the last minute, and then I'll get you to introduce her.
All
Okay.
right, I'll wait.
In the meantime, welcome, Marianne.
Marianne, you're muted.
Thank you. It's fun to be here.
Good.
I watched Planet B the other night, and I got so excited about astronomy that I asked Margie if I could join one of your sessions just to hear what happens at these meetings.
I hope we don't disappoint you tonight. I think you'll probably enjoy it.
Did other people watch Planet B? It was about the James Webb.
I saw a program on the James Webb, but I don't know if that's what it was called.
It's a
this is
documentary.
a feature program that ran. Yeah,
Oh,
it's a feature
no, I don't
program.
think I saw that.
2-hour documentary put on
Okay.
by CNN.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's called The Hunt for Planet B.
Right.
Mhm.
Are we supposed to be A?
Yes.
Okay.
I hope we can retain our rating.
Yeah.
Marianne, after you've spoken, you need to turn your
Yeah.
mic back off. Thanks.
Okay.
Neil, I haven't seen you for a long time. Welcome.
I've been hiding.
Neil's muted, but he doesn't know it.
I've never heard you so quiet, Neil.
No, I was just saying that I can confirm that your toilet tank can crack at 2 a.m. when nobody's in the bathroom. And flood your
Oh,
bathroom and your kitchen and your laundry room. So, and that you can hurt your back trying to contort yourself around the toilet to shut the valve off while you're recovering from a knee replacement. So that's why you haven't seen me, because I haven't been able to sit for extended periods of time until now.
So Neil, that only works if the valve works.
Yeah, tell me about it. Yeah, but it's crazy how the toilet tank cracked on its own, just cracked. So who knows about porcelain there?
Not going to touch that one.
Oh,
But fortunately, I was awake while I was repositioning myself due to my knee replacement, and I heard this crack, and I thought, what was that? You know, and so being an old guy, I got up to use the bathroom and discovered the avalanche of water there, or
There's always something. Home ownership, the joys of.
But I'm glad to be back here.
Good to see you.
So Randy, it looks like you made it back warm and dry. Looks like it was quite the adventure.
It was very good. There were a lot of weather,
Yeah.
on land too, though.
Could you remind us where you were?
I was on a mission aboard the Coast Guard ship Vector. It went from here all the way up to Stewart. I flew up to Prince Rupert and took 2.5 weeks coming down. And we kind of went into all the inlets and collected a bunch of mud and looked at the life on the seafloor, and
Sounds like fun.
it was really good.
Well, I think we've got enough people now. There's 27 attending at the moment. So welcome to Astronomy Cafe. We'll get ourselves started. I have on the list right now, first it'll be Margie who's going to introduce a guest. Then I'll do a short introduction to a segment where we're going to talk about the special interest group for the people doing astrophotography. And that will include things from Martin Gisborne, Joe Carr, Dave Payne, Alec Lee, Brock Johnston, and myself. And then Lauri Roche has some things she wants to brief us on. Dave Robinson's got something from the Alberta group to show. And Chris Gainor is going to talk about some space stuff. Is there anyone else that has something they want to say or show tonight?
I'd like to show off my sketch of Petavius, as crater on the moon.
Okay. I'll put you on the list, Randy. Anybody else? Okay, well then, Margie, why don't you introduce our guest?
Thank you. Our guest tonight is Marianne Amadio Gervais. I know her through Canadian Federation of University Women, and she is quite interested in astronomy. Marianne, is there anything you would like to say?
She's muted.
You are muted.
Or you're muted, Marianne. That's it.
I'm excited to be with you because I watched a documentary, a 2-hour documentary, Saturday night, and it was about the hunt for Planet B. And basically, it was about the James Webb. And it's supposed to be launching December the 18th this year. So a lot of exciting news in astronomy with that lens, that telescope. That's all.
Okay, well, welcome, Marianne.
Thank you.
Are there any other guests here tonight? I can't see everybody. There's so many, there's 2 screens full. Okay. Well, the astrophotography special interest group has been going for a while, thanks to David Lee for getting special interest groups going. I really didn't quite know what he was talking about when he started it, but it turned out they're really kind of useful. So in the astrophotography one, we have a mixture of experienced and less experienced people. There's lots of help available when we have questions, and turns out the experienced guys have lots of questions, as do the unexperienced ones. So it's really useful. We have also, thanks to Joe Carr, we have a chat group, so we can ask questions and the whole group can kind of make use of the answers that come through. So that's helpful too. We also do something called a project each month. We meet once a month on the fourth Wednesday of each month. And each time we have kind of a challenge project. Sometimes it's, to find a particular object in space and get a photograph of it. This current project for this month is to process an image, but it has to be one of the images using data that Dan Posey got at the Plaskett the last time we had time at the Plaskett. So that's what's going on right now. Now I'm going to turn to a bunch of these people to get them to say a little bit about what they're doing. And I'm going to start with Martin Gisborne. Martin, are you ready? Okay, you're muted, Martin. Okay.
Yeah, just turn it off.
Okay.
Can you hear me?
Yeah. So you can go ahead and.
I thought you were going to put me later down the line so I could actually see what people talked about on these things, because this is my first time at the Astro Cafe. So
that's why you're first.
That's why I'm first. Excellent. Well, John put out a call for anybody that wanted to sort of do something. And we had the luxury of an entire weekend to put together something if we wanted to show something. So I thought, you know what, I'm new to this. I'm very new to this. I started this 2 years ago, and I thought, well, maybe I'll just show what my journey has been over the last 2 years in terms of photography and astrophotography. So, if I may, I will skip to my presentation and talk about stuff. Are you all seeing and hearing me fine?
We are.
Okay.
Lunacy of eclipses, I'm seeing.
If you you should see the Sky News. You all seeing Sky News?
Yes.
Okay.
We are.
So if you saw this month's Sky News, you may have seen this a little bit here, which is just something I wrote up really quickly for Bruce, comparing two images over time. So the top left is Messier 31 from October of 2019, and then the picture at the bottom is from this October, so 2 years in between. So really what I wanted to do was I wanted to show how this picture led to this, because I'm a fairly new member of the RASC, which ultimately led to this, which is what joining a society like this can do for you. And then talk about how I got between those two places with that photography. So I have no idea how many people on here are not photographers at all, who haven't dabbled in this at all, but this is just my sort of journey through here. Started a long time back in the 70s when I was a kid. My dad had this beautiful white refracting telescope on a wooden tripod, and I lusted after it as a 5-year-old, and I think he sold it when I was about 6. Amazingly, he also sold the Scalextric set about the same time. I'm not bitter about these things, but I remember that I didn't have time to learn or play with these things. But I did grow up with Patrick Moore and The Sky at Night, because as you can tell, I'm not originally from Maple Bay on Vancouver Island. But time passed along and I didn't do any astronomy stuff. And I started working, and I actually worked as a photographer. So that's my day job is in terrestrial photography, and shot all manner of different things all over the world, from sports to aviation stuff. You might notice I always sneak a picture of the moon in somewhere, wildlife stuff, landscape, all manner of different things that I photographed, but I never did any astrophotography. So after a few years, I found myself living in Paris, and this is where I can trace my current steps into astronomy and astrophotography interests, is from living here. I lived on this street in Paris, and with the magic of the internet, I should be able to just click a button and take you on the street for a second. This is the Rue de Rivoli in Paris, and that's the Hotel de Ville, the town hall down there. But right at the end of my street, taunting me every single day, was a telescope shop. And I say taunting because I lived in Paris, and Paris, you don't see any stars. There are no stars to be seen. It's not called the City of Light for nothing. That's a light pollution map of Paris. Now, To be fair to the citizens of Paris, they are extremely good. All of their monuments, which are lit unbelievably beautifully, all turn off just after midnight every single night. So all of those bright lights do go off at night, but not enough to be able to see much of the sky. So anyway, a little while after that, I relocated over to the Bay Area in California. And for me, the United States is synonymous as a child growing up with space exploration, astronomy, and all that kind of stuff. And I actually ended up living about 2.5 miles from the Ames Research Center. So I was actually close to NASA. And the best part of that was it had a gift shop. So I still drink my tea from a NASA mug, which was from the Ames Research Center. Now, I was fortunate to travel quite a lot around the US when I lived there. So I was able to go down to Cape Kennedy. This is the vehicle assembly building at Cape Kennedy. You can see the giant doors there on the left-hand side. I went to the Grumman Museum on Long Island, a place called Bethpage. This is a lunar module that was never went to the moon. This was the lunar module that was built for Apollo 19 and never made it there. These are all pictures that I've taken on my travels. Went to the National Air and Space Museum in Washington, D.C. This is Gene Cernan's spacesuit from Apollo 17. But the most important place was just down the road from my office in California. Orion telescopes, they're based out of Northern California. They're based out of Watsonville, and they just happen to have a shop about a mile from my office. So it's where I spent most of my lunch times and quite a considerable amount of my paycheck at Orion. So I ended up buying an Orion Skyview Pro, a 100mm refractor, which of course led to buying a bunch of eyepieces, which led to buying another bunch of eyepieces, which led to buying a motor, which led to buying a tail rad and some filters and a bigger telescope and a smaller telescope. And I had all this stuff and I never really used it. I never really used it for astrophotography. I didn't know how to do astrophotography. I did take some pictures of the moon. This was taken back in 2007 through one of those refractors, but I never really learned how to do astrophotography. So a few years passed by and I find myself in Canada, and October of 2019, I stepped outside with a Nikon DSLR, 70 to 200mm lens and a tripod, just a regular camera tripod, and I shot a bunch of pictures. I had known for some time that the way people do deep space astrophotography was to stack pictures, take a bunch of pictures and stack them to improve the quality of the pictures and to improve the signal to noise ratio of the images. So I took a bunch of pictures. This is 20 pictures, shot at an incredible ISO 12,800. And I say incredible because I cut my teeth in the photography world in film, where you were shooting on ISO 64 and 100 and 400. And so ISO 12,800 always strikes me as being an absurd ISO level. So this is the images. Now, of course, it was on a fixed tripod, so there is movement. If I show you a quick animation of that, the object is moving through the scene. And I took those pictures and came inside and I bought a piece of software called Starry Sky Stacker. It was a very inexpensive piece of software that allowed me to align and stack those images. And as I said before, I understood the concept of signal to noise ratio and how it would improve the images, but I hadn't actually seen it in action. This is a single frame, raw frame from that set. And if I zoom in, you can see the noise on there, all of the color noise that was generated from ISO 12,800. But then if I zoom into the stacked version, you can see the noise is all gone. And this was like a little bomb going off in my head in terms of understanding what that was going to do. And it really led to me diving down this rabbit hole. So that led to me signing up. In fact, my wife and I, Christy, we signed up for the family membership on the Royal Astronomical Society of Canada, and I joined in October. And I went to precisely 2 meetings before the pandemic hit. The other thing that happened was I became best friends with Amazon at that point, because that's where I started to get lots of gear, as probably you will realize as soon as you start getting into astronomy. So tracking the sky, the first thing I did was got a small star tracker. I got the Skywatcher, Star Adventurer. It's a phenomenally little, small, lightweight, portable star tracker, which I've used on my regular tripods. It's actually very flexible for me as a photographer as well, because I can actually use this not pointing to the sky, but just pointing to a landscape. And I can use it to rotate through a landscape and do a time-lapse image across the landscape, which is incredible. The downsides to it is it only tracks in right ascension, so it's only got one axis for tracking. And of course, it's weight limited. So the very first thing I did was I put a 7.5 pound lens on that Star Adventure. This is my 200 to 400 millimeter f4 lens, and I used it at 400 millimeters and managed to get this picture here, which is obviously still M31, the Andromeda galaxy. Now I managed to half that ISO, going down to 6400 ISO. I increased the exposure times to 20 seconds from the original 2, but I'm still using the same camera, and I could see immediately what a difference this was going to make to taking those pictures. So these are some of the pictures that I took from that time. This is the first one I took of Pleiades. I was very pleased with this because I'd always remembered those great pictures of Pleiades when I was a kid, with all of the nebulosity in there. And I thought, wow, look at all this nebulosity. And then I realized this was actually just fog on the front of my lens because it was a cold night. So this was when I learned that I needed a dew heater to keep the lens warm. So I didn't fog up, but I kind of liked the picture anyway. The Flaming Star Nebula, I'll come across this again a little bit later on. I did the Triangulum Galaxy M33. Obviously, one of everybody's favorite targets, the Orion Nebula M42 and Running Man, and also the Californian Nebula. So these are some of my earlier pictures as I was starting to learn. And getting the things that have struck me about this is how different this is to when I first kind of had a look at astrophotography back in the late 2007, 2008 era, how different this all is now. First thing I did was I got Charles Bracken's book, The Deep Sky Imaging Primer, which is just an incredible book if you're starting on this journey of astrophotography. So much detail, so much easy to read detail, and I actually keep it beside me all the time, even now when I'm processing images, just to remind myself of steps that you can sometimes forget. I liked it so much, I collected the set. So I have all of Charles Bracken's books, and I'm hoping he's going to be doing a astrophotography planner for 22, 23 at some point. YouTube, obviously, also, it's where everybody goes for the chap who mentioned fixing his toilet. I'm sure there's plenty of videos on fixing toilets. There are also plenty of videos on astrophotography as well. And of course, Amazon kept on coming with the boxes and boxes of books and books and books as I was learning this stuff. I started learning about different techniques to improve the photography. This is me getting my sort of crafty hands on making a Batanoff mask. If there's anybody that's not seen or heard of a Batanoff mask, it enables you to focus images. And this kind of stuff to me is like magic. When I see something like this working, it's literally like magic. So I took a piece of paper, I cut it out through this pattern that I downloaded off the internet, and it enabled me to focus. And this is the sequence of pictures that I took when I was trying to practice focusing on a street light. You'll see that as the picture comes into focus, the diffraction changes as it goes through those pictures. And once it starts to look like cat's whiskers, you know you're in focus, and you can take the mask off, and then that's the picture of the street light perfectly in focus. This is just magic little bits of science to me. And then this is, if I remember correctly, the Batanoff mask wasn't even invented until the early 2000s. So again, this is new technology that's come along in between the last time I was looking at telescopes and the time now. I realized very quickly that the paper one won't last much more than a night because it gets very damp and soggy out there. So these are the ones that I use. And you'll notice that I think it's just really cute that William Optics used the cat's whiskers on the red cat to show you what that diffraction spikes is supposed to look like. So also one of the things that I found, of course, was that you had to learn software. Now I've already used the Starry Sky Stacker, and I use Lightroom and Photoshop in all of my photography work anyway. So I needed to get some other software. I've always used Starry Night Pro. I've been using that probably since it came out. So probably about 3 different owners ago of Starry Night to be able to do my planning and sort of stellarium type of stuff. But I wanted to look into more sophisticated softwares for astro processing. I looked at Astro Pixel Processor and I looked at PixInsight, and I decided that PixInsight was the most complicated one. So apparently I chose that one as my software to use. And PixInsight actually, I've worked in photography and worked in photography software for about 20 years. And PixInsight holds the title of being the only piece of software I've needed to buy a book for in the last 20 years. It's an incredibly deep piece of software, but just does incredible things for astrophotography. I'd be a bit remiss to not mention some of the apps that are available on the iPhone as well. The iPhone was only launched in 2008, so that was a year after I took that moon picture. So there wasn't actually any even app store at that point. But I use Clear Outside, which is the one on the left, Safari, Sky Safari in the middle, and I also use Astrospheric. I don't know if we as a club have access to Astrospheric, but clubs can actually. We do. Do we have the membership on that? I'm wondering. You can get a membership for that for free from Astrospheric, which gives you planning stuff and collaboration features as well. So maybe that's something that we could look into at some point. This is just an aside, but was just something very thrilling to me last year. I took a picture which ended up on the front cover of the journal. If you remember this cover image of the Heart and Soul Nebula from last year, I took it. And I took it using exactly the equipment that's in that picture. So it was taken on a Nikon D850 with the 105mm micro nickel lens, which is actually a macro lens. And I wouldn't recommend it for doing star pictures because it's really not very good in actual fact. I used the Star Adventurer tracker and it was just sitting on a regular Manfrotto tripod. So I really tried to hammer that Manfrotto tripod and Star Adventurer combination to see just how much I could get out of it. And it was genuinely thrilling. It's been a number of years since I had a magazine cover, and that was very very cool to see that on there. So some of the challenges over the last couple of years, and it does involve this global pandemic that we've been going through. As I said before, there's unlimited learning resources. They're accessible to us through this. Loads of inspiration online from YouTube, YouTube to Instagram to AstroBin, where people post lots of astronomy pictures. And of course, there's this amazing software as well. It's all very accessible and very easy to get to. And there's also all of this affordable gear. I mean, and I say affordable, it's affordable in comparison to some of the stuff that's available for astronomy and astrophotography. And some of the technology itself is so easy to use. It's kind of breathtaking in what it can do, and I'll show some of that in a minute. The problem, however, has been that while those 3 things are available to us, the tech and the affordable gear has not been over the last 2 years. Anybody that's tried to buy any telescope gear or buy mounts or filters or cameras or any of that kind of stuff will have found that the combination of supply chain issues and the fact that a lot of people wanted to become involved in astronomy through the pandemic has led to it not being available to buy stuff. So I found myself in a situation where I had 3 little telescopes. The blue one is the old one I had from the late 2000s, and I managed to pick up the other 2 during the pandemic. All 3 small refractors. The Meade is an astrograph. The red cat is a Petzval type of lens, which Petzval is interestingly an old photographic style of lens as well. That's many decades old. And those 3 telescopes give me this kind of field of view. This is Starry Night Pro showing some objects and what I can see. So the blue square is the blue telescope, the white square is the Meade white telescope, and the red square is the red cat. And for some larger objects like the California Nebula, I can pretty much do those okay. Pleiades fits into the frame on that longest telescope. The moon is pretty small on all of those telescopes. And the galaxies, of course, it's not particularly helpful for me to shoot galaxies with any of these telescopes. And of course, planetary stuff is next to impossible. That's Jupiter right in the middle of the strongest of my telescopes, and I can't really do that. So I did what I did with telescopes, what a lot of people do with houses during an economic downturn. Instead of buying a new house and upgrading your house, people buy new carpets and new curtains. So I ended up buying a field flattener to improve that zenith star. I got that from Hotech, and it's a generic field flattener, which works very well. The telescope itself has this silly little foot thing for mounting, and I decided I needed something beefier and chunkier. So I got beefy rings and a chunky plate, which makes that telescope sit on the mount much nicer. And I also realized that I needed to improve the mount. For anybody that hasn't done astrophotography, the mount is a key part of keeping that telescope steady while you do these long exposures. So that's the mount, and that's how I've ended up. So I've gone from a camera with a regular lens on a regular tripod to that in just 2 years. And all of that thanks to astrophotography. Another thing I've stepped into is guiding. Guiding, for anybody that isn't aware of what guiding is when you look at a star in the sky that's close to the target you're trying to photograph, and you monitor that star, and as it moves, you redirect the mount slightly. So it's constantly adjusting the mount to keep that star in the same place. And you can buy these incredibly affordable bundles of gear that allow you to do this. So this was a bundle of, this is a computer, a guide scope, and a camera. It's not currently available. That computer has now been superseded by the Plus version. And the Plus version, I think the Plus part is pretty much just that it's now got an antenna, which improves the Wi-Fi on that. But it's a little computer that handles everything that I do with this telescope. That's the little guide camera, tiny little thing, 1 megapixel monochrome camera. And this is the computer that controls it all. You can see it's a tiny little thing based on a Raspberry Pi. I know some people in the astrophotography SIG use this. And this does everything that's written down the side of the screen. So the polar alignment, it does focus checking for me. It helps me plate solving, target acquisition. If you're wondering why some of those are written in white and some of those are written in orange, that's because by the time I get to the orange sections of this, I can actually be inside, nice and warm, having a cup of tea, doing all of this from my iPhone, because it's all controllable from the iPhone. So a really just an amazing device that's only been available over the last sort of 4 or 5 years. So let's have a look at some images. This is a recent one of Pleiades. This is without any fog on the telescope. So this is actually the nebulosity in there. As I said before, Pleiades has been one of those subjects that's been just really one of my favorite subjects over the years. I remember seeing pictures of this as a kid, and all of the stars had spikes on them, which I didn't realize at the time was diffraction spikes, but it just looked how space should look to me. So I was very happy to get this picture. This is the Triangulum Galaxy, Messier 33. Just a beautiful spiral galaxy, which is quite challenging to shoot because it's not terribly bright. This is a later version of the Heart Nebula. This is a much better version than the one that was on the journal of the RASC. I'm quite happy with this kind of target and trying to get as much detail as I can out of these. Did some clusters. I went through a phase of doing a lot of clusters last year. So this is Messier 13 and the Great Cluster in Hercules. And as I said before, I can't really do planetary stuff because I don't really have the equipment for it. And also, everything I do is on the Mac, and there isn't really any decent software that I know of that can do planetary stacking on the Mac. It's quite a different kind of stacking to deep space astro stacking. There is an application called Linkios, but it hasn't been updated for years. So I haven't really used that. I didn't need to put a label on these. I figured everybody know what they are. First time I photographed the comet was extraordinary to me. I couldn't believe that that was a comet in the sky, that green object. It's Comet Atlas C29Y4 from March of 2020. And of course, this was just really the curtain raiser of comets in the year of 2020, because of course, Comet Neowise appeared in the skies and was just an extraordinary sight. This is Neowise in the sky basically over the Cowichan Valley, looking from Maple Bay. This is also the comet over the Cowichan Estuary, with some glorious industrial strength light pollution going on down there from the wood factory down there. And then this is the sort of the hero shot, if you like, of Neowise that I shot one night when it was pretty good in the sky, and I'm fairly happy with this as an image. The stars aren't completely round, but I managed to get the dust tail and the iron tail and the green core of the comet. So that was my Comet Neowise shot, which I was delighted with. Some later nebula pictures, California Nebula again, the improvements. It's interesting to go back and forth between stuff I've shot a year or two ago to the stuff I've shot now. This is the Bubble Nebula. This is the Flaming Star Nebula, which I showed right at the very beginning, but it was hadn't learned at that point how to reduce the effect of stars in the image, which sounds kind of like something you wouldn't want to do in astrophotography, but in actual fact, it's a very important part of the processing of astrophotography images. And of course, there's a lot more stuff going on in this picture than just the Flaming Star Nebula. There's two other messier objects in here and various different nebula in there. And these have all been shot from literally here in Maple Bay, and I live under a Bortle 4 sky, so it's a fairly dark sky. And this is one of my later ones, which is the Iris Nebula. I think I saw Dave has a picture of this as his background on this call tonight. And also, I still love shooting the moon. There's something still just beautiful about being able to shoot the moon on a regular basis. So these are some regular pictures of the moon. And again, these are not stacked images. These are all single images of the moon shot fairly recently. I also like moon in situ as well, environmentally pictures of that. So that's Mount Prevost at sunset with the earth shine of the moon and the bright side of the moon. Now, talking of the earth shine, this is something I don't do very often. This is a composite shot, and not a composite shot in terms of a stack, but a composite in terms of different lengths of exposure. The difference between the darkness of the earth shine side of the moon and the bright side of the moon is just enormous, and cameras just cannot pick that up. So multiple shots composited together to show both the sunlit side of the moon and the earthlit side of the moon at the same time. If I zoom out a bit, you'll see that this was shot at the time when Mars was also very close to the moon. So that's Mars just down there in the lower left-hand corner. And then if I zoom back out some more, that's the overall shot of that. So it's a composite image, but I've tried to make it look as close to what the scene looked like when I took that picture. And then this one, I showed you with the overlays of the telescope. This is a very small object in my telescope, but this is it was another kind of important milestone picture for me, because it was the first time I learned to shoot. It's really about learning to have the patience to shoot one target over multiple nights instead of shooting multiple targets on one night. The more data you get, the better the image is going to be. So I shot this over 5 nights. I shot about 17 hours in total. I was ruthless with discarding frames that weren't very good. So this is in total about 6 hours of exposure to get these two galaxies to look this way. So 2 years later, where am I at? I'm super into the history and the combination history between astronomy and photography. I sometimes sense a little tension between the astrophotographers online and and real astronomers. But people think that astrophotography is just making pretty pictures and stuff. This is an article that I got from 1889. I actually have this article, the physical article. This is a scan I made earlier, talking about the using photography to improve astronomy. And there's a line towards the bottom of there where it says, "It is a progress of the same order which realizes today the definitive introduction of photography in astronomical observations. It is to deliver the astronomer from a labor, thankless, painful, irksome, and fatal for the eyes." Nothing as dramatic as writing in the 1890s, apparently. So I've really been interested in this combination of the history of photography and the history of astronomy at the same time. I created an Instagram page where I've started to share images, but also sharing some of the stuff that I'm learning as I go along, because obviously there's still some people coming to this every day that are coming to this new. And I try and come up with different ways to show how astrophotography works. This is a page I did where I showed how increasing the data improves the image quality. So that's 4 images, 9 images, 18 images, 36 images, and 72 images, just showing you how that image improves with the more data that you give to it. And then just to finish off, this was that shot from October 2019, and this is the same target shot in October of 2021, so just 2 years later. It's been a phenomenal journey. I wish I could have done this journey with some more inputs and club meetings down in Victoria. I enjoyed those, the 2 meetings I went to down there. And that's about it. So thanks for watching.
Okay. Well, thank you, Martin. It's a bit humbling to see what you've done in just 2 years. It's pretty amazing.
I've had some spare time.
I think we'll hold the questions until all of the people that are going to talk about the astrophotography stuff have had a chance to do their thing. If that's all right, unless somebody's got a burning question they want to ask Martin right now.
But just that you could tell from the quality of the pictures that they were taken in Maple Bay.
Yeah, that's a good.
Nice one. Nice one.
Yeah,
Good-
I noticed
good
that
point.
too. That was pretty impressive when he moved to the West Coast.
Yeah, I'll say. Anyway, that was a real tour de force, Martin. Thank you very much.
Indeed.
Really well done. So, Joe, Carr, would you like to take it away next? Can't hear you, Joe. You're muted, I think.
I'll unmute myself.
That's good.
And I just have to fuss around here for a second and get the slideshow going. Oh dear, now I've got everything covered up. I guess I better do a share first. Keynote. Okay. So, oops.
We can see your screen, Joe.
Yeah, I know. I'm just trying to get it full sized. There we go.
Good.
Okay, so what I'm going to talk about is, ooh, dear. What I'm going to talk about is observing and photographing objects in the southern hemisphere. The first thing I thought I would do is just give you a quick overview of the view. So this is not my photograph. This is taken by Jerry Black, RASC Halifax member who was in the Atacama Desert a few years ago. And I'll show his time lapse in due course. But at the moment, that just gives you a sort of a lay of the land of the Milky Way that you see from this southern hemisphere. How far south do you have to go to actually see the southern hemisphere is, I guess, the first question to tackle. And my quick answer is Costa Rica. Obviously, this is in the northern hemisphere, but it's only 10 degrees north, and it gives you a good view of the southern hemisphere if you look south. And you can even look north and still see the pole star. It's about creeping along at just a few degrees above the northern horizon. So if you need to align, you can actually cheat and photograph the southern hemisphere using a northern pole star alignment, which is kind of tricky because when you get in further south, you can't do that because you won't be able to see the Dipper or the North Star at that point. So Costa Rica is 10 degrees north, and it's fine. It's good. It's John and his wife Wendy and I were in Costa Rica a couple of times about a decade ago, and we were on the Pacific coast, which has it's quite dry there. Costa Rica ranges all the way from dry to tropical, but the Pacific coast is dry. It has very stable air. And if you pick the right time of year, you can actually see quite a bit of interesting celestial objects in the southern sky from there. The next step down for me, I guess, would be to go to the Atacama Desert, which I have not gone to, but Jerry was there, as I just said, and that's 24 degrees south. Another good location would be Namibia, Botswana area in Africa. You can see by the map there that it is kind of puzzling as to why I would choose that. But the reason I choose that is because it's actually quite dry there. Namibia is just full of sand dunes. Botswana basically is completely covered in the Kalahari Desert. So both good spots to observe from. And Namibia actually has been proposed as a professional telescope site quite often. The Chile site, of course, is the champ when it comes to professional observatories. And so obviously the amateurs follow along. And if you look on the map there, just above the word Chile is where the Atacama Desert is. And I'll show you a couple of images that I've taken using the SLU telescope. And the SLU telescope is sited just by Santiago, just inland from Santiago. So you can see that on the map as well. Obviously, there's more to the world than just those places I showed. Australia and New Zealand are both excellent places to observe from and photograph from as well. Australia has this big empty area in the middle of the country, and I'm not going to get into it in any great detail because I have not visited Australia yet, but I have been to the North Island of New Zealand, and you'll see a couple of photographs from there as well, taken from there as well, by John and myself. You can see the southern latitude there is really nice because you're 35 degrees south on the North Island. The North Island is great because although it's not a desert, it is a subtropical climate. And so it's very civilized to observe from there pretty well year round. You do have to deal with a few storms coming through around the surrounding ocean, but generally speaking, it's really a lovely spot. And a lot of amateurs go to Australia and get into the remote central area of the continent, the outback area, because it is exceedingly sparse human habitation. So they have just ink black skies. It's just wonderful. Okay, let's just hit a few of the eye candy, because that's the point of this whole presentation, isn't it? The Small Magellanic Cloud is a dwarf galaxy. 47 Tucanae is probably one of the most spectacular globulars that you can possibly lay your eyes on. The binocular view that I'm showing on the right-hand side is not really a binocular view. I should have graded all out, because you can't see those colors with binoculars, but you do see that kind of detail if you have, dark skies. It's just mind-blowing, 47 Tucanae. And the Small Magellanic Cloud itself is worthy of a couple of hours of scanning with binoculars as well. The Large Magellanic Cloud is nearby. I don't know if you remember the lead title slide that I showed there of Jerry's panorama, but the Large and Small Magellanic Clouds are separated quite a long distance from the Milky Way in our galaxy. So, but they are fascinating dwarf galaxies, and the Large Magellanic Cloud in particular is just packed full of things. You could spend nights and nights and nights in that area, and photographically, it's a very rich area. This is John's photograph taken from New Zealand in 2010 when we were there. I sort of flipped it on its side so that it would be approximately the same orientation as the I think that's anyway, it's the annotated image, just to give you an idea of just how much is going on in there. Now, the Large Magellanic Cloud is pretty big. It's 10 degrees wide. So, 20 times the size of the moon in diameter. So it's a pretty rich area to explore. Both of these galaxies are sort of transforming from spiral to bar galaxies because they're being pulled and pushed by the Milky Way. The other problem with these, of course, is that they are at roughly declination minus 70. So you have to be quite a long way south in order to be able to see these. The last year, as Martin has alluded to, we've been sort of trapped, and I'm an inveterate traveler. My nickname is Joe Tourist, and so I have not been traveling. And so I threw some money at SLU and decided to use their gear. And so this is the Tarantula Nebula, which is in sort of part of the Large Magellanic Cloud. It's not really part of it, but it appears to be from our perspective. It's an exceedingly bright object, and you can certainly do a lot better than I did here, but SLU has a limitation on the number of integrations, number of photographs you can take of each object. So I have to work with what I'm given. That's my excuse anyway. Jewel Box Cluster is absolutely a spectacular object to look at in using binoculars in the southern sky. John Herschel described it as a superb piece of fancy jewelry when he named it. So enough said. Omega Centauri can actually be observed from northern latitudes, a little bit further north even than Costa Rica, as far south as if you're south enough, southern US even, and Florida. John took this shot from Costa Rica in 2010. This is a camera and lens on a tracking mount. This is the same approach that I took on a previous trip to Costa Rica. This is a 70 millimeter lens and a modified DSLR on a tracking mount, and this highlights the Southern Cross on the left side. Eta Carina on the right side, with the big orange red nebula. Above Eta Carina is Stock 13 cluster, and below it is called the Southern Pleiades cluster. And dead center is another nebula, IC 2944 and 8. There's actually two nebulae in there. This is actually not a terribly wide field of view. And I have to say that finding the Southern Cross, although it's always on everybody's checkoff list, it's not that easy to find, because Crux, as it turns out, is the smallest constellation in the sky, and the Southern Cross is only one little part of it. The best way to find it, actually, is if you look on the left side of this photograph, the left edge, you'll see a dark area, and that is called the coal sack, and that is actually easier to find than these four stars, this kite-shaped stars that is so, I don't know. It has a name for itself, let's put it that way. If we zoom in on the right-hand side of that, I actually took a better shot of Eta Carina using SLU again. Eta Carina is just absolutely astounding, both visually and photographically. This is only, I think, 3 or 4 photographs stacked. I mean, it's so bright, you just don't, it's so easy. There's a wide variety of young and old stars, star clusters in this nebula. It's a very rich area, obviously, of star formation. It has a luminous hypergiant star. It's got the masses of these stars are 100 to 150 times the mass of the sun. So there's just huge amounts of luminosity coming out of this area. And this was done with Chile 2 telescope just this year. I think what I'll do now is just show you the Jerry Black's, it's about a 4-minute, little over 4-minute video, because it's really spectacular. This is shot from the Atacama Desert. So I would encourage you to go to the southern hemisphere and experience that. You may have noticed that Jerry also got some excellent shots of what would be considered northern objects, especially Sagittarius area is so high in the sky that if you want, especially if you want to image it, it just is so much easier than us having to sort of suffer and pick our season and hope for the best with the clarity in the southern horizon. Especially M16 and Trifid and those sort of things are much easier to capture. Okay, I'll just quickly finish up with some advice. Keep in mind, if you do go to the southern hemisphere, you're going to, in the daytime, you're going to be disoriented. The sun is not where you're expecting it. The shadows are all wrong. You're going to have to get used to that. It takes some time. As it turns out, a lot of the British colonies in the southern hemisphere, of course, are in the southern hemisphere, and you're also going to have to worry about left-hand drive and all that sort of stuff, but that's another issue, nothing to do with astronomy. Nighttime disorientation is the same problem. Moon phases are all wonky. Asterisms and constellations are not as you expect them. They're all rotated. Polaris and the Big Dipper are not visible. So you're going to need some planispheres that are southern hemisphere oriented, or set your planetarium app or your software to a southern location so you can start to work it out. It takes a few nights. And I would suggest you give yourself some extra time to adapt to that. Try not to be too hard on yourself. If you're aligning an equatorial mountain, you do not have the pole star. So that means you have to use the southern pole to align with so that your mount will work properly. Obviously, your mount has to be able to do that. And you need to be able to figure out how the finder scope works using southern pointer star patterns. So I just copied this out of my AstroTrack manual, this little diagram on the right-hand side, but you can see it does have the northern orientation for the Dipper, and but but it also has the Southern Cross and the alignment indicators for the stars, which is what you have to use in the Southern Hemisphere. Again, take some practice. Give yourself more than one night. And I think I'll wrap it up there. I will post this on our website as part of the summary, so you can refer to these links and resources.
Thank you very much, Joe. That was wonderful.
Oh,
You're welcome.
beautiful to see.
It was. It reminds me of how much fun it was to be down there.
It was, yeah. It's too bad it was so long ago. Maybe we'll get down there again.
Okay, we can allow one burning question if you want for Joe. And then we're going to have to move along because we got quite a bit to show tonight. Okay, let's move it. The next one, Dave Payne. Go for it, Dave.
I was going to actually take a pass this evening.
Oh, you can if you want.
Yeah.
You
I'll be
can if you
talking
want.
about-
That's okay.
Thanks.
We'll get you back another time then. I know you've been busy.
Yeah. Appreciate that.
Okay, in that case, Alex Lee.
Oh, that's great. Thanks very much. Boy, what the presentations that Martin and Joe showed are just fantastic. What I'm going to show to you is going to be considerably more modest. And it's really a reflection of part of my journey into astrophotography and why I'm very excited to be a part of this. So let me begin. I'm just going to share screen here and bring up my, there we go. I decided what I would do is focus more on skyscapes rather than deep sky, because this is what got me into it. For pretty well all the shots that I'm going to show here, I just used my camera, regular lens, tripod, and processing was done in Photoshop. I should mention that I'm certainly an amateur, very much an amateur, but a very willing learner. And I'm finding I'm getting a great deal out of this particular special interest group. What I thought I'd do is just spend a few minutes on the kinds of objects that have meant a lot to me, and that I tried to pay attention to photographically. And of course, the first one is the moon, and I'm just fascinated with the moon and try whenever I can to get good images of moon rises, of just general moon shots like this one over Trial Island here, or the Hunter's Moon rising over Mount Baker. This was last year. That was a real treat for me because I didn't expect it to be so perfectly behind the mountain. But that's the sort of thing. And as well, I really enjoy taking just images straight up of the moon. I'm trying to learn what the different features are. I figure that Neil Armstrong and Buzz Aldrin and Collins landed somewhere around there. I hope I'm right, but in the Sea of Tranquility. But what I just love it, and especially, of course, taking partial moon shots. So on the Terminator, I start to see the features that much more clearly. It's been a fascinating interest of mine. In fact, all my images I put together in a book for my grandchildren, just to show what has meant a lot to me about the moon, its phases, and so on. And then, of course, I really enjoy looking at the interactions of the sun and the moon, like what we had the other night with the lunar eclipse. It was a bit too cloudy for me here, and so I really didn't spend any time looking at it. But if we go back to the January 20th of 2019, that lunar eclipse was just so spectacular. And I put together this composite of 12 images over time, just to show the transition of the moon in terms of its brightness and the movement of the Earth's shadow across the moon, to bring that out as well. I thought that this was fairly dramatic, and it certainly meant a lot to me. And then, of course, the other interaction is the solar eclipse. And I've tried to go to several solar eclipses. Unfortunately, The August 21st, 2017 was the one that was the big payoff for me. I've been rained out too many times, but certainly not this one. I was down in Madras, Oregon, and was able to experience that. For me, it was a life-altering experience. And again, I put this particular composite together just to reflect the changes as we had observed throughout that magnificent day. And then there are the planets themselves. Now, with the kind of gear that I'm using, I can't get planetary images that show any high degree of definition. So I try to image them through their main features, and in particular through conjunctions, which I also find fascinating, like the Mars-Venus crescent moon conjunction from July of this year. This was just shot over the Colwood-Machosen area, or the Moon-Mercury conjunction back in May. Mercury is so typically elusive for me, and to find the opportunity to photograph it was great. And then some other planets themselves. I actually was able to get an image of Uranus here, and when I started to look at the image that I'd taken, I could see pretty clearly that that was it. That was a real thrill for me. And then, of course, the Great Conjunction last December was something that I was particularly pleased with, because it was the first time that I, using my gear, was able to actually get an image of Saturn that showed the rings. You could tell it was Saturn. And each of the moons were also reasonably visible, especially when I pumped up the light, especially for Titan. But that was something that also was really special for me. Of great interest as well is the Milky Way. And any opportunity I get to photograph that, I try to take advantage of it. And last year up at St. Joseph Bay near Cape Scott was particularly fantastic. No moon, no clouds, very few people, and it was just a beautiful, beautiful week there. And of course, to get a meteor in your shot is an added bonus. Down here, it's harder, of course, to get good shots of the Milky Way, but I found that out at Eastwood Park, especially at Crakey Point, has been a place to pay off. Here, of course, we've got Jupiter and Saturn in the image as well. And then the other bonus that Martin was talking about, of course, was Neowise, as it graced our skies. And this particular image, last July 12th, I took from Mount Talmy. It was about 4 o'clock in the morning. There was one other photographer there who's also with us tonight, that's David. But the added bonus here was the noctilucent clouds in the sky. And then a few days later, from Mount Work, we spent the night up there actually trying to photograph Neowise, and we were fortunate enough to get this. Now this is over your area, Martin, and I have to say I did use my Photoshop to take out some of the stark lights that were there, just to show the image and to show Neowise in all its glory. So these were some of the images I wanted to just show you, should say. This is what got me into it. This is what's got me interested in learning more. And certainly with the SIG, I'm just picking up all kinds of stuff. I now have a tracker. I've been trying to take some images such as these ones, but you can tell just by looking at them that it's a start, but I've got a way to go. And as I say, being a part of this special interest group has really been a great benefit to me. So thanks for the chance to show these images and just say a little bit about my journey and my opportunity to combine my love of photography with astronomy and to try and take it to the next level. So thanks very much. Here we go. I'll stop share there.
Thank you very much, Alex. That was wonderful. Some of your images are just spectacular.
Oh, thanks.
And really very nice. So, Brock, you're next.
Yeah, well, I didn't have time to put together a big presentation, but I did actually get some images this week. So that's something to be reasonably happy about in such an awful November that we've had. The 16th, I think it was, I went out and I actually wanted to capture the Rosette Nebula, but I wasn't able to until quite late. So while I was waiting for the Rosette Nebula to come up, hopefully you can see the shot that I've got here. I put together, I used my dual narrowband filter. I wanted to get some hydrogen alpha and oxygen emissions recorded from Andromeda M31. And so it was really an interesting shot because all of my other, I've done quite a few shots of M31, but it never really been able to see the amount of nebula that are present in it. And so this was really interesting because it really shows very clearly how many star forming regions there are with young stars that are illuminating or exciting the hydrogen and getting it to emit in that nice red hydrogen alpha region. And sort of what I was actually waiting for to come up that night that wasn't up, I was asleep by now, but later on in the night, my prime target that I was really hoping to get came up, and that's the Rosette Nebula. And it didn't actually get that many exposures because the clouds came in at some point. So I only ended up with 21 images, but it's a start, and probably my next imaging session, I will get back out and try to get more time on this target because I think it potentially will be pretty spectacular when I get a few more hours on it. And that's all I have. Alec, Martin, and Joe put me to shame there, but
Beautiful day.
This is nice stuff. I've never seen the star forming regions that clearly etched in Andromeda before. That's quite neat.
yeah, well, actually, one of the things I like about these images, like I like to, I look at Andromeda, and I love galaxies because there's potentially so much there. Like it's an entire galaxy, and there's probably some Andromedan astronomer sharing slide decks of pictures he took of this nebula from his star, which is somewhere over here or something. And, it's such a massive space there. It's always mind blowing, but very interesting.
I love the detail in the Rosette. Works really well, even though you've got more to do by the sound of it.
Yeah, well, 20 images. Nice to get probably 150 or so. Just really bring everything out. The fainter regions are not worth pulling out because they're just going to be noise.
Can I ask a question?
Sure.
Of course.
Just Brock, the picture of Andromeda, did you say how were you doing the narrowband? Was that a narrowband filter on a one-shot color camera, or are you doing that?
Yes. It's a one-shot color astro camera with a dual narrowband. It's an IBAS NBZ filter, which is a dual narrowband. So it gets both the hydrogen and the O3 emission lines.
Cool.
And
I've been interested in the Optilon ones, but I heard a lot about the IDAS ones as well.
Yeah, the L Extreme and the NBZ, I think, are quite comparable. I got the NBZ partly because one of my telescopes with a reducer is getting into the sort of reasonably fast range of f3.9, and the NBZ deals better with the tighter angles on the faster light cones and has better transmission. And one day I might break down and get a RASA or something. And if I'm buying filters, I'm also get a filter that will work. So,
I think RASAs is the only telescopes you can actually currently buy.
Oh, really? Okay, well, there you go. That's my excuse.
That seem to be the only ones that are in stock anywhere is RASAs. If anybody wants to RASA any size, anytime you want one, they're available.
This is a beautiful example of what goes on at the cafe. We have people sharing ideas back and forth. So thanks very much, Brock. That was good. And I'm going to share the screen myself now and just show you a couple of things. Okay. So everybody in the astro imaging group is sort of heading off doing a variety of things. Some of them overlap, some of them are different. I'm at the age where I've already done astrophotography of a number of different types. It's sort of a hijacker of all, but a master of none, I think. But what I've been up to lately is, because I've been picking up ideas from the others about some of the newer methods of processing, for instance, using PixInsight and being able to take stars out of an image and so on. I've been having fun going back and looking at some of my old images and have been a bit surprised that some of them are a little bit better than I thought they were. This one is not a great image technically because the lens that I was using had terrible distortions near the edge and so on. But it still is an interesting picture from down in Arizona, looking at the Milky Way from a site after climbing up in the middle of the night in the mountains. And then this is a somewhat better technical picture that was done with a better lens. In this case, a 50mm Sigma A-type lens. And it made a pretty nice picture the first time I did it, but reprocessing it brought out things that I hadn't really expected. You can see a lot of details in this picture. Whoops. Let me just go to the next one. Here's some of the things that are in it. The Seagull Nebula, Barnard's Loop, of course. SH 264, which is this round hydrogen alpha region here. The Cone Neb and the Rosette, of course. But the other thing that's kind of interesting is that there's another object in this that I couldn't really see very well in this picture. At least I didn't notice it until I took the stars out. And then I noticed that there's something down here, a little whitish blob. And that little whitish blob is actually an interesting object. I'll show you a bigger blow up of it then with a small telescope. And it's called forget the name, Sharpless. See if I can remember it. No, sorry, it's IC 2118. But it's also called by some people the witch head. And you might imagine seeing the face of a witch here and the hat up here, the two eyes, the mouth, and the nose. But you might also see it a little better if I take, if I take the stars out and put fewer of them back so that you can still see the stars, but not quite so many of them. And then if I take the stars out altogether, you just see the nebula by itself. This is actually a reflection nebula. It's thought to be a reflection of light radiation really coming from Rigel and the bright stars in the Orion constellation nearby. This is it turned upside down, and this is the way some people see it. Some people see this as the nose and the chin and the eyes of the witch. So you can see it, you can see a character in it either way you look. The other thing that I've been doing recently is working a little bit on helping David Lee and Reg on the VCO. And this is the first image that we've taken of a bit of the moon with it. And some of you will recognize the objects in here. we've got our moon expert here tonight, so Randy can tell us what these things are. But this object here is a very nice and very famous crater.
It's
Randy,
Grimaldi.
do you want to speak to this?
Is it Grimaldi or Crescendi? I got to look it up, but it's
Crescendi, I think.
Crescendi.
It is
And the,
it is Cassandi. They also call it the diamond ring.
Yeah. And this is the Mare Humarium here.
Mariam.
And then I want to show you this. This is a just a monochrome picture of Jupiter. And to get a scale, this is Uranus to the same scale. And sorry, this is Uranus. This is Neptune to the same scale as Jupiter. They're really very small. These were all done during some tests when we were just trying things out on the scope. So that's what I wanted to show tonight. So I think that's everything from the astrophotography SIG. If there's any discussion or questions that people want to bring up, by all means, do it now.
I know I've spoken a lot, probably too much tonight. I was just curious, John, about your landscape, astro stuff. I presume you're doing a stacked image of the stars and you're doing the landscape as a separate layer on those.
Yes, Martin, that's, if it's me you're asking or Alex?
Yeah, it was you, John, yeah.
Okay. The answer is yes, I usually take a bunch of them to stack, but I will always take one shorter exposure and I'll use that for the foreground. There are other ways to do it, Martin. There's new stacking programs that have just come out recently that will allow you to stack both and put them together. But they don't do a really clean job of separating them.
I don't know how many people are Mac versus PC on here. I'm not trying to start a debate about Mac versus PC, but the Starry Sky stacker that I was using at the very beginning of that presentation, the same guy that makes that makes two other stacking applications. One's called Landscape Sky Stacker.
Yes.
The other one's called the other one's called something completely different. My mind's gone now.
Yeah, one's for a Mac and one's for a PC, and I've used both of them.
These are both Mac apps. Can I just quickly 1 minute show you something?
Sure.
I just got it on my thing here. This is the same developer that makes the let's just do this for a sec. Let me unskip these. The same developer that does that, the Starry Sky Stacker does the Starry Landscape Stacker, which detects those stars. It also detects the sky, but it gives you a brush that enables you to paint more easily that mask in. And then it aligns and stacks those stars and composites the foreground in at the same time. And the really interesting thing about his application is it allows you to save that TIFF out with the mask as an alpha channel as well. So if you're not completely happy with it, you can then do something about that in Photoshop. So it's actually I found that to be really a lot of fun to play with on that. But he also does this one, which has been a very useful one to my daytime imagery. At first blush, this looks like just a picture of Vancouver's skyline. But what's interesting about this is that I took a sequence of pictures for a time lapse. And so they were all static images. And using the long exposure stacker that this guy makes, I was able to blend that stack to create this effect of being a long duration image. So the foreground again is actually composited in separately, but the background clouds are blurred as if I'd used, a really heavy duty neutral density filter and just on a very, very long exposure, which of course I couldn't have done because it would have blurred most of the other moving objects in the picture. So this guy, this is the first stuff that I came across for stacking, and they've proved to be just incredibly useful to me for both daytime stuff and nighttime stuff. Anyway,
So
I'll stop yapping.
Martin, that's an alternative to those heavy neutral density filters then.
It is. It was astounding. I actually went back into my archive to look for something I could throw into that application that I'd shot statically, because obviously, you know, when people use neutral density filters to shoot waterfalls and give that lovely kind of, you know, feathery curtain of water, well, you can do that now with a bunch of static images by blending them using that particular application. It was a ton of fun to use, actually, I've got to say.
So Martin, does that mean I have to buy a MacBook?
You know, the answer to that is always going to be yes.
You can have one of each, like I do, John, David. You can do it all.
Any other comments or questions? Okay, in that case, let's move on. Lauri, you had something to share with us tonight.
Yes, I just wanted to remind people that we are taking names for people who would like the calendars, the RASC calendars. We haven't received them yet, but we've been told that we'll get them before very soon. But we do have some of the other things that have come in. So we do have some of the almanacs. And if you'd like to get a 2022 almanac, that was done by Nicole Martellero. We have some of those in stock. We have a couple of the workbooks for the Explore the Moon programs. So these are the Morn and for the Explore the Universe program. So everything's in here, ready to go with all of the places for you to do all of your work, and everything is there. And then you hand it to Mr. Weir out in Machosen, and he gives you a gold star. So if any of the people that are new, not a lot of you probably are into this, and however anybody wants to do that, those are available from us. And the other thing that I did get for the center is the planisphere that is from the native sky watchers. And so in the sky watcher one, there is one for the one for Cree, one for Ashnabi, and I believe the other one is the Innu one as well. So that's kind of the Innu one. So when we are ever able to get out and have we're doing some work with people, that would be a really wonderful object to take and to talk about some of the different constellations that are there. It's fairly expensive. It costs about $35, but you are supporting the Native Sky Watchers program and all of the work that is put into that. So I don't have any trouble with doing that whatsoever. But for the calendars, we ordered 40 of them. I have the names and numbers for 20, which means any of you that would like some, please email me at Roche Lauri, Lauri @gmail.com, and just give me how many you would like, and I'll make sure that your name gets on the list. And then we'll be Chris and I probably will be going out and getting them to people as soon as we have them. So if anybody right now is just interested, just in fact, just put something in the chat, and you can just let me know. I do have some of your names, but not everybody's. So the other thing that I would like to say is thank you so much to David and Brock and Dave Payne for helping out with our FDAO Star Party that we had. That was the James Webb Space Telescope program part 1 was last Saturday, and we had Chris Willett and Matt Taylor from the DAO who gave presentations on what was going on, and then our part 2 is going to be on December the 18th, which is the solstice night. Now I know, Chris Gainor, you're probably going to give us the oopsie daisy bad news of the James Webb Telescope, but we're still going to go ahead with our program, and we have Madeline Marshall and Wes Fraser doing the next one on the 18th. So we'd love to have everybody come out and support our program. It's on Zoom or YouTube, and we'd love to see everybody out at it. I'll just do a very quick share screen just to kind of give you an idea of what we're doing. So the program will be from 7 to 9:30 on the 18th. Here's Wes Fraser. If some of you know Wes Fraser from the NRC, he is going to be doing his work on the Kuiper Belt objects and working on an ultra faint survey of some of the Kuiper Belt objects. So he'll be working on that. And in short, he says the discoveries will make it invaluable in understanding why Pluto never grew up. So that's his thing. Madeline Marshall is from Tasmania and is a Plaskett Fellow right now at the DAO, and she's doing the supermassive black holes and is going to be doing a program on some of the holes way back at the very beginning of the universe. Both really good speakers, and we hope that everybody comes out for that. So that's on the 18th. Thank you.
Lauri, I just wanted to add that Dan Posey added a lot of Plaskett content on that night as well.
I'm sorry. Of course, Dan was there. The Plaskett is still not up and running beautifully. There's a problem with the camera. So they've got the spectroscopy going, but not some of the camera work with the Plaskett. So we're not sure. It may be up, and it may not be until into the new year before we can get back to the Plaskett up for taking some nice pictures. So, but there's been a fabulous new mirror though. I mean, or a re-illuminized mirror. So it's looking good. All right. Thank you.
Thank you, Lauri. That sounds like a wonderful program.
Okay. Yeah.
Okay. Dave Robinson has something to show us from Alberta, and I think I have to do the showing, Dave. Is that right?
Yeah, you put that up, popped up. So this is a photograph taken by Alistair Lang of the eclipse. They had better weather in Edmonton than what we did here, that's for sure. He took it using a Canon 60DA at ISO 400. He's got a 200 millimeter zoom lens at 150 millimeters f6.3 on a Star Adventure. And what he did with this one, he took 15 seconds, every 15 seconds, he took 6 exposures from 4 seconds to 1/8,000th. And he combined them all, chose 5, and then dropped them into GIMP to put this sequence together. So he aimed the tracker to track at solar rate on the center of the Earth's shadow. So what you see there is a very accurate representation of the Earth's shadow as the moon goes through it. And he said there may be time lapse to come.
That really is spectacular, the way it shows the shadow of the moon.
Yeah.
That's quite neat.
Wow. That's great.
That's Alistair. He plans very well.
Okay. Thanks very much, Dave. Now, Chris, you're next, and then Randy. Chris, are you with us? Oh, yeah, there he is. We're not hearing you, Chris.
All right, so the big news in the world of space astronomy is that the James Webb Space Telescope is now no longer going to launch on December 18th. Now NASA is saying no sooner than December 22nd. And I just put up this schematic of the James Webb. Is all folded up on top of the Ariane rocket, which is going to launch it from French Guiana. And yes, the December 22nd date, it's still very early in the morning over here. But the issue that they've been having is they've been attaching it to the rocket. You know, they use a little adapter thing to attach it to, and a clamp broke and shook the telescope, and so they want to take a good look and do some due diligence on that before they continue on with attaching it to the rocket and making sure that everything's okay. It's the art of mounting these things on top of the rockets is really something, and it's more than just getting a couple of people up there with wrenches and turning them. It's quite an involved thing. So anyway, the important thing is that that they do it right rather than do it by a specific date. So we're looking at that right now, and then the other news from today is about Hubble, and let's see, whatever it was I was going to show is vanished somewhere. Let's see. Anyway, I won't bother with that because I don't have all day to look for it. So anyway, Hubble, they just hooked up the another instrument a week or two ago. They got going with the advanced camera for surveys, and now they're starting. They've started up the wide field camera 3, and that's actually those two represent the majority of kind of call for Hubble's time. There are 3 other instruments. There's the Space Telescope Imaging Spectrograph and the Cosmic Origin Spectrograph, which haven't been hooked up yet, as they try and restore full operation. There's actually another instrument called NICMOS, which is actually not in operation anymore. So anyway, the kind of the really geeky computer problem that they were having was messages that weren't syncing correctly from the instruments. Apparently, they haven't run into that yet. So Hubble is getting closer to full operation, but they say it's still going to be a while before they get to that. And I think they're still working on those issues. So that's basically what I have to say here.
Okay, well, thank you very much, Chris. I hope that the James Webb does get launched. And if it's a few days late, that's not so terrible, but I just hope it works.
Chris, do they have, is the telescope already in there and ready to go? And that, so that, like, can they take it out to do some work on it or to test it? Or can they do all the testing from in there?
They weren't that specific about it, but my suspicion is that what's going on is that it's probably sitting right in the spot where it has to be, and probably suspended from a crane or something like that. And but they haven't actually attached it yet.
Okay. Okay.
But it's there. I think they want to take a look at it and see. And also they're talking about looking at the effects of this shaking. Although of course it gets a hell of a shake once the rocket goes. But I imagine this clamp that broke was not an expected event, and they probably want to look at that too. And then they will go back to attaching it again. They said that there would be another. We'd probably hear something back from NASA about this on the weekend. So we'll see what we hear on the weekend, or perhaps next Monday, about how this is going. And hopefully they'll have it hooked up by then. And then, because December 22nd, now we're starting to really run into Christmas. And I don't know sort of how big a deal Christmas holidays are there. I know they are at the Cape. I do remember the very first Ariane rocket that was launched down there in South America went up on December 26th. So there you go. They aren't afraid to work at that time of year.
Okay, well, thank you, Chris. Randy, you're on.
Oh, well, this has been such a wonderful Astro Cafe today, hasn't it? Do you see my sketch?
Yes.
Okay, so on Thursday, I'm invited to give a talk to the Nanaimo astronomy group. And so I was delighted on Saturday morning that the moon came out enough that I could actually give a new sketch. So this is the part of that group of 4 craters that just line up beautifully along the terminator shortly after full moon, or shortly after the new moon, lit from the other side, Langrenus, Vendelinus, Petavius, Furnarius. And I just spent some time really focusing on one. Usually when I see them, I try to do all 4. And this time I've really focused on the one. And I guess the feature that I hadn't focused on before is how fat the rim of Petavius is. There's the famous spoke of the wheel here, and the very complicated central mountain. So this is what the Lunar Reconnaissance Orbiter would see for exactly the same time that I did this. And here's a better picture, and it's this. You can really see it looks like a double rim here, which I tried to capture here, which maybe I noticed before, but I certainly paid attention to this time. So really cool getting to know a just one crater nicely like that. So one of the deals with Nanaimo is there's the Nanaimo News Bulletin. There's a reporter there named Chris Barnes who interviewed me, and I hadn't had this line before, but obviously I said it because he quoted it in his article that got published today. But I said, the more you observe, the more you observe. And I think that's something that all of us in this club know. And I just want to say how much I appreciate this evening's presentation. We had some new people who presented just wonderful stuff this evening. And it's inspiring seeing the devotion and excitement and enthusiasm that everybody has. This was just super tonight.
Thanks for that comment, Randy. I kind of wanted you to see some of the stuff that we're doing, because the astrophotography group has really attracted a lot of new people. And some of them are showing us how to do things that we didn't know. So that's wonderful. Okay, does anyone have any last minute thoughts or comments before we end the meeting? I would like to thank all of the people who made presentations tonight. I certainly enjoyed them. And I hope everybody else got a little bit of the flavor of what's going on in the astrophotography group. You could see it kind of breaking down into detailed discussions of the technology, which we tried to avoid to some extent, but you can't stop these guys from getting into the nitty-gritty. Okay, well, maybe that's it then. Thanks everybody for coming, and have a good week. Bye all.
Thanks very much.